Alright, parents and kids, listen up. Pretty simple concept. If you strut around acting like a thug and rob the local 7-Eleven, push the old guy around, and then, you know, when the cop comes, you yell and cuss at him and try reaching for his weapon and wrestle with him in his car a little bit, and when he's yelling at you to get away, you may attract bullets. Not saying that's what should have happened, just saying that's what would naturally usually happen when you do that kind of stuff. You know, we're all responsible for the sum total of the decisions we have made in life. And eventually it adds up and consequences do occur. If you don't like bullets, don't act like a thug and rob stores and create the circumstances in which bullets would be attracted to you. It's a simple concept, really. And people try to evade responsibility all day long, but it's just not reality. And even though ideally, you know, we wish that the officer would have been able to handle that better or whatever, but in real life, that's what can happen. So if you're training your kids, you might want to give them a different identity rather than a thug to latch onto, thinking that acting like a tough guy and pushing people around and getting in trouble is a good idea. I'm just saying that it's not going to have a good end result one way or the other. So it's a loving message here. It's not a hateful message. I would rather that the young guy would still be alive and well and happily married and all that stuff, but we're responsible for what we do. And eventually you make a wrong decision like that and certain things can happen. So totally avoidable. But who's driving your life anyways? We can pass blame all day long to other people, but that just ain't how it works. You know what I'm saying? I suspect that this deal is a trap. Now, I'm not saying that this event didn't occur. It's obvious that it did. And there is plenty of grounds for people to be angry. That's people's right to protest and things like that. But as far as the rioting and the news seeming to push the buttons, and the politicians, even the top politicians, kind of feeding the fire a little bit, kind of encouraging people halfway to kind of go participate in this kind of activity, it looks as if they're almost trying to get the ball rolling on something bigger. The problem is that this particular case, which all this hinges upon, does not establish a moral high ground for the side of the people protesting, okay? As you can see from what happened with the situation, I mean, the kid kind of was asking for it, and a thug, and this situation is absolutely perfect to get the two sides riled up. Because you're going to have your one side, which has had plenty of legitimate police brutality in the past, and a legitimate grievance to latch onto this particular shaky foundation of a case. Okay? And that's what they're going to base this movement on. You're going to give the other side fuel for the fire because they're going to look at this particular case and see that, wow, that guy, that cop was, he had to use lethal force, is what the other side's going to see it. So this deal is like masterfully kind of selected out of all the different possible cases that actually would hold water as far as police brutality or excessive force or the militarization of the police. This particular one's very interesting in how much hype it's been getting. And it looks as if they kind of were paying attention when they did that. There are social engineers kind of working, and there are people who would benefit greatly if there would be some kind of insurrection going on, or anti-police protests, or a civil war even to come out of this, or a race war of some kind, because they could crack down on the First Amendment, they could crack down on protesting, they could pass draconian legislation for riot control and policing and stuff like that. So this deal potentially could be real bad. So I would encourage people just to really look at this carefully before you get out the pitchfork and the torch and start burning stuff to the ground. if you are legitimately worked up about the whole situation, people express their feelings as not being only angry at the Michael Brown situation, but being angry at just everything in general. Well, I would suggest, just on pure logic, that if you have a grievance with something, you take it to the person you have the grievance with. You don't burn down the pizza store or the liquor store or wreck people's property who didn't do anything. That's insanity, but that's what they want to happen because it's going to create this chaos to which they can bring order out of. It's the oldest trick in the book. The Caesars knew how to do that. They've been doing that for thousands of years. This ain't conspiracy theory stuff. This is, I mean, Adolf Hitler did it in recent history. This is something that happens all the time in the world. And you need to kind of pay attention so you don't get drawn up and jump onto that bandwagon unless you're dang sure that that's going to be beneficial. You just got to think it all the way through. You always got to think before you act. Know what I'm saying? So if people do have a legitimate grievance with police brutality, they need to take it to the police. And what I'm talking about there is not a violent way, but they need to bring that grievance to a spot that's actually going to affect positive change. You don't just go wrecking your own neighborhood. That deal is constructed to just create chaos and is not going to be constructive in any way. To tear down your own neighborhood is absolute insanity. That's why people are looking at this so funny. But the emotions are primed right now. So it's a good time to get that snowball kind of rolling. And I'm just saying, you guys better be pretty careful. You know, when times get like this, just because when the emotions are flaring, people are like 10% brains and 90% just raw reflexive action. You know what I'm saying? They're just going to make their decisions based on emotion, and that's never a good thing when you're thinking long term. Just keep that in mind.